Hello, everybody, and it's good to see everybody again. It's your friendly neighborhood man finally back. I apologize, but I was doing what we're going to talk about today, what we're going to gab about today. So, welcome to episode 11. We've hit the double ones of Gabbin with Oof, and again, for the delay, kind of, is because of what I was doing. And what we're going to gab about today is that I finally finished reading the book by Natalya Neidhart herself, Nattie, and the book is called The Last Heart Beating. And so I found out that on Instagram that Nattie was doing a book signing tour of her memoir, basically. And I saw her a couple weeks in Bookends in Ridgewood, New Jersey. Shout out to Joyzy here. And so there was about 200 people, from what I saw from other people reporting, that there was about 200 people went to go see Nattie. It started at 6, if I'm correct. Went till like about 8:30. I waited about an hour or so to meet Nattie, but I finally got up to her. I brought her roses, pink roses, of course. I told her I was trying to look for pink and black roses, but no such thing. But she did appreciate it, and we just spoke for a good, I'd say, 2 minutes. She was just telling me about her book. And I asked, will it be available in audio form? She said eventually it will. And so she signed the book. And then, of course, I made her laugh. I forgot what I said, but made her smile, made her laugh. And then finally, we took a picture together. So what we're going to do in this new video of episode 11 is we're going to talk about the book. I'm going to try to keep it spoiler free because I'm really encouraging everybody to go get this book. If you like autobiographies and if you're a mark like I am for celebrities, and if there's a celebrity you like and they write their memoir, autobiography, whatever you want to call it, I say get it. All the books I have of wrestlers are wrestlers I do appreciate and I do like. As of right now, the best wrestling book I've read is, of course, I mean, he's above my head, he's on my chest, is Bret Hart's book. Bret Hart's book is like an encyclopedia, and he goes into a lot of detail of life on the road, of what happened to him. And of course, something happened a couple years ago in this month of November in 1997. If somebody in the comments can tell me what happened in November of 97, Survivor Series in Montreal, he gets into that real good, his relationship with the company and everything that happened in his personal life. So right now, Bret is my number one best book of a wrestler to read. Number two has to be another number two. It's Chris Jericho's second book, Undisputed, it's called. And his first book, Lionheart, I believe it's called, the first one, is absolutely hilarious. But Undisputed, it's just so good. And I caught myself, and I've had his third one, Chris Jericho, Best in the World at What? I have no idea. It's just as good as well. But of the trilogy, I have to say Jericho's second book, Undisputed, is the best. I don't know why. I just found it more better, more intriguing. The funny part about Jericho's book is when you start reading the book, I started hearing Jericho's voice in my head. Maybe I was hallucinating. I don't know. But I started hearing his voice actually reading it while I was reading it. And then when he goes into the parts with Goldberg, that is where comedy ensues. He brings up, whether the first or second book, he just changes Goldberg's name into everything. Gold Turd, Goldilocks, Golden Bears, Golden Grant, you name it. And I had to actually stop reading the book because I was dying of laughter every time Jericho would mention Goldberg. So number two would be Jericho's second book, Undisputed. Number three would probably be Mick Foley's first book, Have a Nice Day. Just like Bret's book, it's very, very detailed. He goes into a lot of personal things in there. He does mention Survivor Series in there a lot. He talks about Owen as well. Coming in number four, I'd probably say The Rock's book was really, really good. At the time he wrote it, when he was the hottest thing in wrestling, and you learn about his family, of him growing up on it. And coming in number five, I just read it, but I'm going to put Nattie's book on there as my best favorite fifth book of all time, which is Nattie's book here, The Last Heart Beating. So let's go into it. So again, going to try to keep it spoiler free because would love people to buy this, to enjoy it. Again, if you like reading, if you're a book reader, or you can get into audio form, it doesn't matter. But so here we go. So the book starts off a little sad-ish, kind of. We start off with Nattie going to New York because that's when the Hart Foundation got inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame for WrestleMania weekend. And so that's where the book starts. And so we're starting off kind of sad, where Nattie and her mom are in New York talking about and thinking about her dad. They do something with her father's ashes, which I won't say, but it's just a comedy ensues, but it's just kind of funny what happens. Kind of cute there as well. And then Nattie gets right into it. She goes into growing up a Hart kid. What does it mean growing up in that historic family known as the Hart family, the legendary Hart family up in Canada? And one thing I did learn, which I did not know, so new wrinkle in the brain, was I always thought Nattie has two other sisters. I always thought Nattie was the oldest of the three. Well, reading the book, I found out that Nattie is the second of three. Her first sister, Jenny, then it's Nattie, then it's Kristen, her younger sister. So Nattie's two of three. And all three are gorgeous women. But Nattie was the only one who she says that got that itch to wrestle. And so we go through it in the early days of the Hart Foundation. Actually, first her father was a singles competitor. And then finally he teams up with her legendary uncle, Bret the Hitman Hart. Yes, that Hitman. And they become the legendary tag team of the Hart Foundation. So life was pretty good. But as quickly as life was good for Nattie, life came crashing down. Unfortunately, the Anvil had his vices, and he wasn't the best dad, wasn't the best husband, and Nattie goes really into detail of life in there. So you would think, all right, your father is a famous wrestler in the 80s, and we all know the high boom of the rock and wrestling connection of the 80s. The WWF was hot back in the day. You would think, all right, a child of one of those wrestlers would be living at large, but yes and no. And so Nattie goes into real detail of how her dad was living that rock band life, that rock star living legend type world in the 80s. But for Nattie, it wasn't all sunshine and gumdrops for her, unfortunately. She goes very detailed into her father's vices, how it was growing up, again, a child of a wrestling superstar. And you would think any child growing up in that situation would probably experience the same thing, but some people experience highs, some people experience lows. Nattie, unfortunately, experienced a lot of lows more than the highs. She does say the great times were great, but she wouldn't sit back on those great times because she knew the downward spiral would come. And living with her father at the time was like a roller coaster. There was many highs and many lows, and unfortunately, there was a lot of lows that she had to deal with. She talks about getting that itch, seeing her cousins, Harry, and her good friend at the time, TJ, who later would become her husband, would be wrestling in the famous Hart family ring that Stu Hart, the legendary Stu Hart, would have outside of his house, of the famous Hart House in Calgary. And she said she would notice that she would be the only girl actually really watching her cousins get into it and get that itch. But there was no real Hart woman who got into professional wrestling. The only closest that there was her grandmother, Helen Hart, the matriarch of the Hart family, but only because she was in the business with Stu. And if you know anything about the Harts, Stu and Helen, Stu was the promoter and Helen worked the office. So that was the closest that a female Hart got into the wrestling business back in the day. But then Nattie slowly started feeling that itch to become a wrestler. And again, no women Hart or any connection to the Hart family would do that except her. Time would go on. She kept getting a little older. She got a job as a waitress as she started her training. But she just knew that this dream to reach the pinnacle, which of course we all know it is WWE. I mean, yes, thank the Lord, AEW is around, TNA, NWA, and all these other little federations as well. But the name of the game is WWE, which is fine, and I get it. And so she wanted to carve out her own name in history in WWE without being known as Stu Hart's granddaughter, the daughter of the Anvil, the niece of the Hitman, of the Rocket, of the British Bulldog. She just wanted to carve her name in there. So she did everything the company asked for. Back in the day, there was an NXT. Well, there was, but it's not the juggernaut it was today. Back then, she had FCW and the beginnings of this new NXT, but it was it's just starting off there. And she also gets into her relationship with TJ. They started off as friends. TJ was her number one motivator to get into the ring. And she always thought, which was funny, and so I guess a spoiler here. So in the book, she mentions that she thought that TJ had the hots for her sister Jenny, but reality, TJ had the hots for her. And it's just funny how their relationship goes from best friends to training together to eventually walking down the aisle. And so we go through the highs and lows of trying to get that phone call from WWE. And so Harry and TJ make it, but not Nattie. And so if you remember women's wrestling back in the mid-2000s, it was nothing like it is today in 2025. It was all bikini models, skinny girls, athletes, cheerleaders, that look. And the whole diva search came up there. I believe it was a John Laurinaitis the idea that he created to get more athletic women into the company. So Nattie already was not liking that direction WWE was going because she, in her mind, didn't fit that mold, even though I think she's absolutely gorgeous. She didn't feel like she was paper thin, or she had that athletic look, or she looked like a cheerleader, or she wasn't a lingerie model. Everything that WWE's direction of women at the time, she felt horribly about it because she was really, really sensitive to her body and to her looks. And you can't blame her really, because if this company that you're dying to work for is saying you need to have this look, you have to have this height, this personality, this look, and this type of clothes, it really affects your self-confidence. And she was going down a horrible path where TJ had to, not literally but metaphorically, smack her out of it and tell her, like, look, be yourself. That's the message that you keep reading this book, that a lot of people, TJ, the Hitman, in one part, Davey Boy as well, they all kept telling Nattie, just be yourself. Yes, in the world of wrestling, you got to be a character. Yes, in the world of wrestling, there may be a certain image that they're looking for, but in the end, you got to be yourself to get forward in life, and especially in this crazy world of wrestling. Yes, you have a character you can develop and all that, but to get things going, just be yourself and forget what the company is saying. But unfortunately, this was Nattie's dream, and she's being told, you got to look like this, you got to wait like this. That's another thing about her. Her self-confidence was destroyed. And again, it just shows you how the company's changed. Like I said, we're in 2025 now. This is probably about 15 years ago, 20 years ago, that Nattie had to go through this horrible experience of trying to get into the door because she didn't look a certain type or a certain way. So we thank the Lord that things have changed as far as we know in there. But again, it's just the difference of the regimes. She goes into the whole Total Divas thing where she's like, okay, if it seems like to get exposure, it means I have to play a character, I have to be a actor, not only a professional wrestler. She went with it, and she got called to be started in it, and she goes into real detail of how it all started. And she's good friends with the Bella twins, Nikki and Brie, and she says she gives them credit so much for helping her build her self-confidence. She gets into it where she knew for Total Divas that the attention was on them too, but she was fine with that. She's like, as long as she's getting exposed too, she thought it was fair. We go into it more of her relationship with TJ and how now they blossomed into a relationship. Another thing I learned was she only got married because of Total Divas. That's what is in the books. So she felt like TJ and her could just live together and be a couple for eternity and not necessarily get married. But the idea was brought up with Total Divas that the producer walked up to her one day to like just talk about, like, you and TJ ever thought about getting married? And she's like, well, we have thought about it. And they both finally kind of came up to a yes together, because the producer of Total Divas said that the company, I believe it's A&E that the show was on. No, it was E Entertainment. E Entertainment would pay for their wedding. So come on, what person would not go like, wait, someone's gonna fit the bill for my wedding? Sure. So they got married because of Total Divas, and I remember that episode and all that. And this adventure on the wedding day is hilarious in the book, where it's, I forgot what that law is, where everything could go wrong, will go wrong, and it did. So literally the journey to the walk down the aisle was literally that, a journey, and it's awfully hilarious how we go there. Finally, they carve up the New Divas title, and they wanted to push, if you remember, Michelle McCool as the first champion. But it seemed like the company always turned to Nattie to make someone else look stronger, look better. And she said basically, F it, sure, why not? If this gets me exposure, if this gets me on television, and if this gets me on pay-per-view with a pay-per-view paycheck, Nattie was cool with it. She was going to show the world what she can do. Even though she wasn't the one that the company was quote-unquote rooting for, they wanted her opponent to look good, to get the title. Nattie didn't care. She's like, fine, you think you want to make Michelle champion? Great, I'm going to make her look like a champion. And she did in that first match for the Divas Championship match. She goes into her friendship with Beth Phoenix, how she first thought like, oh, maybe they're going to compete against each other. But no, the company actually wanted to make them a tag team, which was cool. And she says that Beth is one of her best friends, along with Nikki and Brie. And then finally we get into it. The moment she's been waiting for, she does become Divas champion. And she was proud of it. She didn't care that it was a butterfly belt. She didn't care that it was a title of diva champion, even though she knew she wasn't really a diva. She was a wrestler. She didn't care. In her eyes, it was a championship. It could add it to the lineage and the history of the Hart family, and she was happy about it. But again, they had to do the whole promotion about it. She had to make the appearances, which she's okay with. But again, her self-confidence kicked in. It wasn't until many years later, as the book goes, where she was going to face Naomi for the SmackDown Women's Championship, where she finally knew that, okay, it's not a butterfly belt, it's not a diva belt. No, it looked like a real legit championship. And so again, she was going to show the world what she can do, and sure enough, she beat Naomi. I believe it was at a SummerSlam years ago, and she finally won a women's championship. In her eyes, more of a real championship. The book also goes into the beginnings of NXT, that first ever NXT pay-per-view against Charlotte Flair to crown the first ever NXT Women's Champion, and she just loved the fact that it was a family affair. Charlotte, if those who saw that pay-per-view match or saw that pay-per-view, remember that Charlotte had her father, the legendary Ric Flair, in her corner, and in Nattie's corner was the legendary Hitman himself, her uncle, Brett, as well. And again, little spoiler, she did want her dad to be there, but again, I won't spoil it here, where she goes into the reasons why the Anvil couldn't make it. And then a little connection as well in that match with Naomi to win the SmackDown Women's Championship. Again, her father was unfortunately not going to be there. And of course, we hit where I figured I knew she would go to in the book. She speaks about the unfortunate death of her father, Jim the Anvil Neidhart. She goes into the history of them living together, her parents splitting up, Nattie moving to Canada while her dad was trying to get back into the wrestling game, in and out of it. And mostly it was her taking care of her dad, checking up on his dad. Her two other sisters didn't. Her other sister, Kristen, had 2 kids. Understandable with the erratic behavior that the Anvil was going through, that Kristen really didn't want Jim to see his own grandchildren. But again, if you read the book, you'll see why Kristen chose that, and I don't blame her at all. Jenny would also check up on her dad as well, but it was mostly Nattie checking up on her father. And we go into it, and she goes into the day that he unfortunately passed away. She was not able to be there because she was at a taping. But she asked for time off, and she says in the book that Vince granted it, and he was really nice during that time, which is funny compared to what's going to happen a little bit later. So she goes into very detail on the unfortunate passing of Jim the Anvil. So now, quickly, we go into the next part where it's the famous match of Samoa Joe versus Tyson Kidd, where unfortunately doing a buckle buster, or whatever the heck the move is, Samoa Joe on TJ. Samoa Joe broke TJ's neck, and so she goes into very detail of the happenings of that day. They actually drove Tyson to the ER. The ER couldn't believe that he actually made it there, and his neck was so bad that they thought the surgery he was probably going to be paralyzed. It was just as bad as Christopher Reeve's injury. If you all remember, Christopher Reeve fell off his horse and he was paralyzed from the neck down. It was looking like that with Tyson, but as you know, here we are in 2025, that Tyson's doing well and all that, but his dreams were shattered, literally, figuratively, and metaphorically speaking. His dreams were shattered. He was never going to wrestle again. Nowadays he's an agent, but this is the part of the book that gets really, really tough, that really nobody from the higher-ups of WWE contacted Tyson to see how he was doing, and especially not Vince McMahon. And they felt betrayed, which I don't blame him at all, especially TJ. TJ got some lawyers and just went loose on the WWE. And again, read the book to see how that ended up. And I actually don't blame him at all for being angry at it. The interesting part about the book is how Nattie really, I don't want to say she rips on the company, but she comes off of, like, for instance, like Brett, where, again, we get it, his career ended years ago, and yeah, sure, he rips apart many people in his book. She gets really into it, those details of how management was with her and with Tyson, where it comes off of like a former employee's tell-all book, but she's still part of the company today in 2025. My understanding would be is, well, that was the old regime. She's not attacking Hunter or TKO in this situation. She's attacking the former, quote unquote, former administration. So, if that former administration was still in charge of WWE today, would this book be published? I'm gonna go with no, or at least it wouldn't get so detailed in that part where she goes, it's her versus WWE in a weird way, and lawyers are all into it. I doubt WWE would let her make this book at all, trashing them. Again, if that old administration was in it, not the current administration. So again, would this book even be published? Would it be published under WWE's? I think they have some book company deal where a bunch of wrestlers have their books made by them or published by them. So that's the interesting part of the book where I think Nattie, once the old regime left, I think that's where she got the inspiration to write this book. I mean, you could write your biography whenever you want, but the fact that how she ripped apart the company that she currently works for in this book. But again, like I said, it's the previous administration, so she doesn't go. There's nothing against Triple H. There's nothing against TKO. There's nothing against that in here. She rips apart the old regime of the old management of WWE. So basically, in a nutshell, that is the book. Like I said, many highs that Nattie went through, lots of lows. Some things, again, like I said, some things I did learn that I did not know about it. That's the first one. I always thought, well, Nattie's the oldest. No, she's number 2. But again, very, very interesting book. It is available on audible.com. It's about 8 hours long, and it's Nattie herself narrating it. So how cool is that? You get to read the book, and then if you get the Audible version, you'll hear Nattie's own voice herself reading it. And again, like I said, I highly recommend it. Quick little breakdown of the book. This is it right here. And like I said, I met her at Bookends in New Jersey a couple of weeks ago. Her tour is still going as of today of this recording. Her schedule is up till the 30th of November, I believe, is the last time. And here he is. Whoa, I'm telling you, we're live. And so this is where I met her, and there she is writing her autograph. And what's so cool about this book, what I like about it, is when you take off the sleeve, you have this awesome collage of the famous wrestlers of the Hart family. So let me open it like this. There we go. And so there we go. You see Stu Hart there. You see the Hart Foundation. You see Tyson. You see the British Bulldogs. And, of course, Nattie up there with the sharpshooter. So, again, easy read. It was an easy read. I took my time just to make sure because I wanted to make a quick little recap of it. Again, met Nattie again. She was a sweetheart. She was really, really cool. I'm told she stayed till every fan got their book signed by her. And again, like I said, it goes up to about November 30th. The tour of her book signings, and will she do another tour in a couple months? I don't know, but that's just the first leg of this book right now. So I, again, putting my markism, if that's a word, of the Hart family aside, this was a damn good book. Like I said, the details that she gets into it, and you feel her anger, you feel her joy, you feel her pain, and especially when she mentions her fighting for and against her dad, and then getting to that point when he does unfortunately pass away, you really feel for her. And again, even if I wasn't a Hart family mark, I would still get this book and read it and still be a joy to meet her. But adding that to it, it's just like, I'm proud of Nattie. I'm still a fan of hers. I have never done a top women's wrestler list of all time. It's safe to say she cracked my top 3, but maybe we'll cross that bridge some other time when I actually have time to put a list together. But she is up there. Again, forget the whole markism of the Hart family. Nattie is one of the best there is. And again, the book was great. 5 stars, 2 thumbs up. Whatever the highest ranking there is what I give the book. So again, I highly recommend it. If you like autobiographies, if you like sports stories, or if you're a wrestling nut like I am, I say get it. Get this book, get Brett's book as well. So it's available out there. And like I said, it's available on audio version of audio as well. Audible.com. Check it out. It's there too. Brett's book is available on audible.com as well. I'm told it's 20 hours read by Bret himself. So that's Bret Hart reading his own book to you. So highly recommend it. So other than that, check out the book, The Last Heart Beating by Nattie Neidhart herself, available in all bookstores as far as I'm aware. So that's pretty much it. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you made it to the end, please like the video, subscribe if you haven't yet, hit that notification bell so you can get all notifications of new videos. And I promise I will be back with a new video pretty much soon. Until next time, please take care of yourself, take care of everybody around you, and of course, as always, God bless.